Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil. Good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be in Cardiff. You'll gather from my accent that I'm from London, so coming down to Wales and Cardiff is always a pleasure. I was just telling Neil that 6 weeks ago I did a talk in Lampeter, which is miles from here. So Cardiff seems like on my doorstep. Anyway, this evening what I'm going to try and do is hit some objectives, and I'm going to refer to them. I don't know if you can see the screen, hopefully you can, but I'm going to examine the innovations that have taken place during the 45 years that I've been in the retail industry. I'm going to say a bit later on again that I don't believe you can know where you are today or where you need to be in the future without learning lessons from the past. So that's a very important starting point, is what has actually happened, how do we get here? The second thing is to understand what's led to retail winners and losers over this period of time, and what can you expect to happen in the immediate future. And I'll be quite controversial about this because there's going to be some massive change, and I'll talk about why that's going to be going to happen in a moment. I'll outline some of the issues facing the retail sector today and what people should be doing about it. And then I'm going to talk about technology and the way that technology is going to shape the future communities and the way in which our high streets need to adapt, and the way that the retail sector will adapt, and business models will change dramatically in a very short period of time. And then finally set out a course of action for government to take in order to prepare our high streets and town centres for the 21st century. And what I mean by that is that unless governments, both local and central governments, take the initiative to understand what is going to happen, they're going to sleepwalk into a catastrophe. And those catastrophes are already happening, and I'll highlight them in a moment, around the country. But just to say that if you go to Morecambe, 1 in 3 shops are closed. That's 30% of stores are already shut. And nobody is doing anything about it. And it's not about saving retail. That's the most important message I've got to say tonight. It isn't going to be saved by retailing. So we'll come back to that in a moment. So that's what I'm going to try and go through. Who am I? Well, Neil's done quite a good job on that, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I started as a butcher's lad at 15, and I retired at 60, so I can claim that I've had 45 years in the industry. I specialised in fresh food in the beginning, so I've went through all the fresh food stuff. I was the very first customer services director for Tesco in the mid-80s, and I'll talk a bit about Tesco and the problems that they face at the moment a bit later on. And then I've worked as a CEO for more than 20 years. I noticed there's some Chinese in the audience. Is there anyone from Hong Kong here? No? Yep. Yeah, I was the managing director of ParknShop, or Parkai, as you would know it, for 5 years, 89 to 94. I rescued Wickes from a fraud and collapse in 96 and sold it in 2000. And then I was the CEO of the Iceland Group. That wasn't one of my best ventures in life. It was more difficult to sort out than I'd imagined. I call that a score draw, that one, rather than a success. Although the guy that started it has done his best to point out that it was a complete failure under my stewardship, but that's not necessarily true. And then finally, I bought Focus DIY in 2007. Now, if you want anything, take anything away from tonight, timing is everything. What better time to mortgage your house and buy a DIY company than 6 months or 18 months before the biggest collapse in the world? All right. So that was a bit of a tough one for me, and 4 years later, although we kept it going for 4 years, we had to let it go into administration. but I'm still here to tell the tale. So I say I've had 2 wins, ParknShop and Wickes, 1 score draw and 1 loss. So as a manager, you know, pretty average, not bad. I then stopped and wrote a book, and here's the advert for the night. It's called Sold Out: Who Really Killed the High Street. I didn't want to play golf really, so I wrote a book, and this came out. And then, as a consequence of the book, where I was very critical of the Portas review and the government's cynical attempt to show that they were headlining and dealing with a high street problem by appointing a celebrity to address this very serious issue, and I believe that she missed so many fundamental structural changes that were obvious to anyone in retailing, that I got quite upset about it, and we had 1 or 2 spats, her and I, in public. And so I said to 8 other people, why don't we write our own review and publish it in Westminster and see if we can't show them what they should have had. Now this is the review. It's freely available on vanishinghighstreet.com, which is my website, vanishinghighstreet, all one word.com. It's a PDF, you can download it, you can do what you like with it. We launched that last September, and as a consequence of that, I got asked to lead an advisory group to the Labour Party. Why? Because the government refused to look at the Grimsey review. They said, we're Portas, that's it, we're not interested. Took it to the other side and they said they were interested. So I spent this year trying to compile policies for high streets and town centre regeneration for them, diversifying and strengthening the role of bids in particular, which is a Labour movement, which is, you know, business improvement districts, which are a part of the jigsaw and not the solution, by the way. Pioneering and the look and feel of our future high streets by encouraging, incentivising and supporting entrepreneurs, particularly to develop new businesses and concepts. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment, because I think I see more activities returning to town centres potentially, particularly with things like 3D printing coming around the corner. I think manufacturing can return to towns. I think we've got to stop thinking about our towns as just retail shopping centres. And then finally, restoring high streets and town centres at the heart of a modern community, this is an important word, by transforming them into dynamic enterprise and community service hubs. And what I mean by that is that we have to concentrate on all sorts of activity in this space, ranging from housing, education, health, and I've got a slide on this in a moment, right the way through all of the dynamics of why people would congregate, and then you will get some shops. Because before I go any further, you will hear people talking about, oh, don't want to lose our high street, we all love our high street, and reminiscing about the days gone by. And the fact is, they don't use them. So let's stop all of that nonsense and start looking at how we can evolve into the future. So let's look at the UK retail sector very quickly, just to get some hook on how big it is. And you won't see these kind of statistics. You'll see other retailers that talk about numbers of shops and stuff like that. I'm going to talk about the fact that there are 95,000 companies mixed up in retailing one way or another, whether it be through property, distribution, manufacturing, shop fits, you name it, 95,000 companies employing 326 billion of gross assets, and they borrow as an industry £65 billion and is a total net worth of 135 billion. It is enormous as a sector. The UK retail sector, therefore, compared to something like the defence budget or the education budget or the health budget, is huge. It's massive. And yet there is no minister around the cabinet table responsible for high streets alone and town centres, and there should be. And that's what I've been banging the drum about ever since we wrote this review. It really is important. Even if it was only for a short period of time, this responsibility gets buried in departments with junior ministers, and the last one we had was Brandon Lewis. And I can tell you, Brandon Lewis is not up to the task, all right? And what side you take, whether you're a Tory or you're a Labour or whatever you are, UKIP, or this guy is just not up to the mark. The new lady they've just brought in from Plymouth, I can't remember her name, you may know her. She's now the junior minister for High Streets. She is on the button, so hopefully she may well do the job. On the other side, you've got Chuka Ngumu, who's the shadow minister opposite that side, and he's quite smart, but still, politics is not a place to be. I can tell you that. Anyway, if you look at what's happened though during the period 2008 through to now in terms of shop vacancies, you see this massive hike from 6% right up to, you know, almost 15%, and it's come off a bit, but there is no renaissance going on. This stuff that you're seeing the vacancy rate fall is mainstream convenience stores by high street names like Tesco, Sainsbury's, occupying convenience stores, and that would have been at the heart, I suspect, of the professor from Southampton's talk, and the rest of it is betting shops, payday loan shops, kebabs, fast food. It is not the kind of stuff that you would want to go and see and visit, okay? So this is no recovery going on here at all. So that's a very important starting point. And where is it worse? Well, here's some clusters. The worst is the Northwest and West Midlands, Wales, Scotland and North East. These are real areas of a problem. And the reason they're a problem is a correlation between that and the local economy. Where the local economy is not doing well, guess what? Neither is the local businesses. So there has to be a different approach to how we're going to tackle this. If you can't stimulate the local economy, you're not going to get a recovery in your town centre. Obviously, it improves where you go to the southeast. You can see it's at its best, or I think that green one's London, by the way. You know, these are bubbles. London's a bubble. Don't even talk about it. You put that to one side. It does annoy me. I speak about the High Street all the time, and I get to talk about the lovies in London, and they all say, "But Marylebone High Street is wonderful." Yeah, give me a break. I mean, you'd have to be completely bonkers not to be able to do well in Marylebone High Street. All right. It's not the real world, and that's the most important thing. So that's how it's sort of all split up. If we look at this point I started with, you can't know where you are today and where you need to go in the future without learning the lessons from the past. Let's look at some of the things I've lived through. Okay, bear in mind, I started work in 1967. It was pounds, shillings and pence, so it was a different currency, okay? We used to price things up with a thing called a plonker. Now, a plonker was a plastic tube, and on the bottom of it was a price. And it had ink in the tube, and you stamped all the tins. And when the price changed, you sat on the floor in the supermarket, and you got out some meths, and you rubbed out the price, and you stamped it again. And that's how things worked. Roll forward the clock to today, and you'll see a massive change start. I want you to try and imagine, gosh, that's just 45 years ago. And look at that change from plonker through to what you see now in stores. Out of town shopping did not exist when I started work. High streets were the centre of the universe. Supermarkets were 10,000 square feet, that's 1,000 square metres. And they were just thriving, but they shut half day on a Wednesday. and they never opened on a Sunday. So Friday night and Saturday was just like bedlam. Okay, that's what it was like. People shopped frequently out of necessity. My mother didn't have a fridge in the 60s. She had a larder. She had to go every day. And guess what? That was her social media. Now I hear all this stuff about social media and Facebook, and I don't know how great it is. Well, guess what? Hers was great too. 2 hours I was 4. I used to go every day shopping. It'd take 2 hours. She'd speak to everybody. She had a wonderful time, have cups of tea, come back home. It filled her day. And then she'd prepare her food. So, you know, in a short period of time, we've gone from that to this. So this is just designed to sort of say to you, if that can happen in 45 years, what can happen in the next 5 to 10 years? Okay? So when you talk about what has changed in that time, start from that point. What started to change? Well, first of all, out-of-town shopping clearly hit the town centres and high streets. All right, people like getting in cars, it's convenient, and driving out of town. They are not going to go back to the high street. You will hear that Lidl and Aldi are doing well at the moment. Convenience stores are on the rise. But trust me, 80% of our food shopping is controlled by 4 companies in this country, and the majority of what they sell is still through their big stores. So although it's coming off, it's not a disaster. It's a disaster economically to them because these big ships are based on scale. And if they get a slight movement on the top line, it can throw them into loss. So they've got their own problems to face up to. But in terms of are they still popular? You bet your life they are. So, you know, this notion that their days are numbered is, you know, a little bit far-fetched. Are there too many of them? Oh yes, and that I'll come back to why in a moment. We de-seasonalised fresh food in my lifetime. My granddaughter, Poppy May, she's 7 now. She does not know that strawberries only grow 6 weeks of the year in this country, or naturally. She gets them whenever she likes. She's never experienced that wonderful feeling in March when you get that first Jersey new potato with lashings of butter after a winter of mash. And as I look at the young people, I think, what's he talking about? And that's what we used to do. We didn't have it. And guess what? We came up with centralised chilled distribution and we blew the whole thing away. And overnight, we de-seasonalised what you can access. You can access anything all year round. The biggest change, however, was brought about by nothing bigger than a postage stamp, which is that barcode. As soon as that barcode came out, we went from a power shift from where the brands in this country controlled the retail sector. When you started out in supermarketing, if the Heinz rep came into you as a buyer, he told you what you were going to sell, how much you were going to sell it at, and why. Because he was advertising that weekend and he'd done the market research and they knew what customers wanted. You didn't know anything, you just had shops. You just did as you were told, okay? Brands ran the show. When that came out, shoom, switch. With the consolidation to more powerful retailers and the information, suddenly the brands didn't have that information. The retailer did. So you got a shift in the power base and the retailers started to dictate everything that was going on. Does anybody remember ski yogurt? Yeah? Some of the more aged people in the room, right? This was the biggest brand in the chill cabinet in the 80s in the UK. And it doesn't exist today. It's gone. So nothing is forever. And there's a theme developing, I hope now, about what's coming round the corner. The next thing that happened is that www comes along and facilitates a load of change for every industry, but particularly retailing, because it enabled sofa shopping, i.e. online shopping. And then these things come along. these mobile devices. And what can they do? These are no longer phones, right? So these are things that are going to take over our lives if they haven't already. And the power is about to shift again. And it should shift to the customer, because the customer has access to information now like they never had before. They can be as good a buyers as a supermarket buyer is. They can research, they can find things, they can get low prices. So the power shift should go to customers. It might shift back to manufacturers. Why would you want a retailer? Just imagine a packet of Colgate toothpaste off the back of a production line, straight onto a parcel force or a drone delivered to your house. Just imagine the cost in between what happens now and then that you take out. The toothpaste would be almost free, okay? So there could be a change about to happen with the manufacturing base in this country. So I think it's important to sort of get in our heads that change is driven by various forces, and in particular technology is going to facilitate a huge change. Now, during my 45 years, I've experienced an A to Z of retailers going bust, okay? I call it retail boot hill. And, you know, from Athena, B-Jam, C&A, Comet, Dillon's, HMV, although a small number of them are still around, right through to Victoria Wine and so forth. Now, Woolworths was the biggest retailer in this country when I was a lad. And when it went bust, it was the biggest seller of confectionery in this country. So nothing is forever. At one stage, they thought they knew it all, okay? And they're not here today. And they've disappeared off the planet. So if you think that Marks and Spencer, Sainsbury's, Tesco, Morrison's, Next, have all got a secure future in the next 10, 15 years, don't think that at all. Once they lose sight of what their customers require and they fail to provide it for them, they too could wind up on Boot Hill. All right. So why do they fail? Well, they fail to predict and adapt to change. That's the most important thing. And positioning is vital. Positioning, i.e. positioning your product correctly for your target market. Let's just stick with HMV for a moment. And let's just imagine we are, just for the moment, we've now converted to the boardroom of HMV, and it's 1989. So we're the board directors. And we're going to have our board meeting, and we're going to have a 3-year business plan, strategy plan. And it's been presented. We've been through a pretty rough ride since, you know, HMV started, a big brand, gone down, but we've recovered. We've got stores throughout the country selling DVDs, CDs, going out of fashion, okay? It's just fantastic. We're on the rise. So we have a 3-year plan. Sales are going to go up 5%, 5%, 5%. Costs go up 2%, 2%, 2%. Profits are great. Terrific, great plan. Open up the Gevrey Chambertin. Let's all go and have lunch and have a drink, and it's great stuff. And then somebody in the board says, whoa, hang on a minute. Can we just think forward, 15 years? We're going to go bust. What? Yep, you're going to go bust. Because if you don't adapt your product now and start thinking of what could happen, start blue skying about what could happen and change your positioning, you're going to disappear. And that's what happened. They just got overrun by technology change and didn't adapt to it. So it's important that retailers do that. Marks and Spencer, by the way, did the same thing under Greenbury in the 90s. He said, everybody keeps telling me what we're doing wrong, but we made £1 billion last year. Can't be doing that much wrong. The next year made 600 million. The next year after that, it halved again, and he went. And now Marks and Spencer is no longer the dominant retailer in this country. It's been overtaken by Next in terms of fashion. And Primark has also taken its market share. So nobody has got a right to exist. Laden with too much debt, pre-financial crisis, this retailing is full of the disease called leverage buyout. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but it's a sickness from America. Most things are actually sicknesses from America that suffer here. I'm a bit jaundiced about the Americans, but you know, this whole idea that you can go in and buy a company for debt, i.e. with a little bit of sweet equity, rip out all the assets and put them in a propco, operationally gear it so the profits go up, flog it with all the debt in it, and you've got the property company over here, and 1, 2, 3 guys make billions and squillions of pounds, is a disease in my view. And we saw what happened with that disease, and a lot of the retailers suffered because of that. One of them was focus. I mean, we never got over that debt problem. Now their problem is they just simply have too much space. The UK PLC has too many shops, and we're going to build more and more new space because we want different space. Big malls are coming, okay? Trafford Centre, Liverpool 1, Trinity, Westfields, and that's more space. Have anyone been to St Pancras, to HS1? That's 120,000 square feet of retail space serving 56 million customers a year. Most of them are not international travellers, they're commuters. Guess what's happening to the high streets up the line? Because they're buying it there. So change is happening all around us. In the next thing that's happening is that consumers are switching to online shopping. We are second only to the States in our appetite to switch to online shopping, and it's going to get more and more and more. This Christmas, John Lewis predicts 37% of their sales will be done online. They've been smart. They've only got 35 stores across the country, so they're ahead of the curve. In the next 5 to 10 years, one of the big 4 in this country will disappear. It'll either be Morrison's or Sainsbury, in my view. But they will go. They're going to go bust. They have far too much fixed assets and they're not required anymore. Too much space, and they're going to suffer. And you will see tomorrow, Sainsbury's come out with a strategic review. It's coming. What it's going to say, I don't know. But they've got a problem. So that's what's all coming at us fairly quickly. And the reason being is that multi-channel or omni, you hear the term omni-channel. Well, what does it mean? I'm a retailer and I hear these terms. Omni-channel means that you've got to have all these things and they all work together. That's omni-channel. But bricks and mortar with click and collect, online, useful apps and Wi-Fi in store is an absolute must, an entry card now. You've got to have a complete mixture of them. By the way, click and collect has got a 5-year life in my view, because when we get smart depositories at home, i.e. like a wheelie bin but it doesn't move, and you can open it with a mobile device with a unique number, what the hell do you want to go click and collect for? You won't get that nasty piece of paper through the door, you know, when you've shopped online. Oh, sorry, you weren't home. Will you drive 25 miles in the middle of the night to an industrial estate and pick up your package? I mean, that's not good customer service. So that's going to change. So smart depositories are coming. Wearable devices are coming. Google Glass is here. I think it's a bit gimmicky, but it works. I mean, it's coming round the corner. Plenty of apps. Stores without stock are coming, okay? Right, here's, good frown, I like it. Here's what's going to happen in the fashion sector. My granddaughters, who are millennials, who are completely great on technology. When she was 5, she said, "Papa, will you buy me an iPad for Christmas?" So I buy her an iPad. It worked when she opened it. I don't know how they get the battery charged up. And within minutes she's all over it. And now, 2 years later, she's using it at school. She's not going to know about high streets and all that stuff. She's going to be adaptable on technology. So she's going to go to a big mall because it'll be safe. That's important. Safety is important. And then she'll go into a shop, which will be a bit like an Apple store, you know, white with booths and flashing lights. And there'll be hologram catwalk in front of them. And it coming towards her and her mates will be hologram models, all wearing the clothes they want to wear. They'll have modules and they'll be able to change what the model's wearing as they walk towards them, mix and match it, do their own kind of designs if they want, stand up in front of a mirror and be wearing it. And this technology exists now, it's a bit flat, but by then it'll stretch with them, okay? If Steve Jobs was still alive, I think screens will then become GUI screens and even change to the material. I mean, that's going to come one day, all right? So, because she stood in front of the mirror, they've got all of her measurements, they can make it for her. She will go for a coffee, she'll go to the ski dome, she'll do whatever she's going to do afterwards, and she'll Facebook herself wearing this stuff, and then she'll order it. Why not manufacture it immediately round the corner? Why not bring manufacturing back here? Why have a fashion industry based on seasons where you have to buy from the Far East, massive amount of stock, start with prices up here, work your way down and do a sale? It changes the whole working capital model that you're faced with, and that is just the fashion centre. Did you get that? Don't agree with it, but you got it, right? Imagine it with food. Food is next. Why, food and household consumers, why was Poppy May, she's not going to want to shop for cornflakes and Colgate. I mean, why waste your time in a shop picking up stuff like that? What you want to do is go to shops where you can buy fresh food, where you can be advised, where you can have an experience, okay? That's what's going to come. So all of these big superstores are going to be redundant. They're a waste of time. Because when Amazon comes in with dark warehouses and does it properly, just for household consumables and stuff that you don't need to touch and feel, it will be so cheap that you don't need to go there anymore. You'll just want to go to fresh food emporiums. Have you ever been to Harrods Food Hall, any of you? All right, just imagine a Harrods Food Hall in the middle of Cardiff that had restaurants all the way around it with experts in it. You'd have TV shows based on it. People would want to go there, have an experience. That will happen in food, and it's just around the corner. So the answer to any future thing is to imagine the impossible, and it will come, because we need a paradigm shift in the way we think. All right, customer service, don't even think about it. It is old hat. All right, if you can't say hello, how are you, thank you, and do all that stuff, you're not in the game, right? What is the game is the customer experience, is the new dimension. And Apple did that with their stores. It's a real experience. They don't sell to you in there. You go in there to problem solve, to talk to geeks about geeky stuff. And when you want to buy something, they haven't got a checkout. They've got it on their thing. It's all about to change at a massive, massive, massive rate. So saving the high streets as retail destinations is just plain wrong. Right? So let's start there. Stop thinking about it to try and rescue it as shops. Start thinking about it as a community hub. Now, the reason it was a community hub before is because people traded there. That's where they bought their local produce, their goats, their sheep and everything. That's what called the marketplace. What we have to recreate is a reason for people to be in these community hubs or town centres in the 21st century for other reasons. And that might be housing, it might be education, it'll be health, entertainment, leisure, arts, crafts, manufacturing, with technology advancing the way it is, 3D printing. And yes, because we've now populated the area with more housing, you're going to have some shops, aren't you? The reason that shops will exist is because people are there to shop in them. So stop thinking about retailing and start thinking about place and community. That's the most important message that I've been trying, and I feel exhausted because I can't get these politicians to even think about it, okay? You still come out with Peppa Pig Day, you know, the Portas towns, you know, has wasted a load of money on nonsense. It's papering over cracks. That has got to be at the heart of it. And what they need to do is to commission a study that says, right, let's start with identifying the unique selling proposition for the place. Now, in this book, you'll see that we chose Nottingham as our case study. What's Nottingham famous for? Anyone know? Lace? Huh? Bikes. Oh yeah, rally bikes. Yeah. Sorry, you said bikes. I thought of Oxford for a bit. Yeah. Robin Hood, right? Lace, Robin Hood, and coal mining actually. It's not far away. You have to really hunt for Robin Hood if you go to Nottingham, you know. I mean, Disney would die for this brand. It's not there. So why would you go live, work and play and visit Nottingham if you haven't got a local authority that is trying to market and compete using its unique heritage? So start there. It's not about shops, it's about what do you stand for, and build around a local economy and build an industry around it and create a 20-year vision for the town. And then get a detailed 5-year plan to start the journey. And I get people say to me, well, hang on a minute, how's it? We've got no money. Don't start about what's affordable. Forget that. Create what you think it should be to compete, and then see how much it costs, and then see how you finance it. Don't start with the premise that you won't be able to afford it, so you're not going to do it. That's crazy. So that's what we try and get people to do. Once they've done that, they should then hold public meeting and share their vision with the community and try and create this community spirit, and then annually account for progress against it. And then you might get people interested in local elections instead of harbouring on about the fact that bins aren't emptied and the lights aren't done. You know, that's got to stop. We've got to start thinking big community here in these. And I'm not just talking about big towns like Nottingham. Lampeter's another case. They're losing their university there, by the way. Do you know it's the oldest university in the country? I didn't know that. I mean, because it's linking with 2 other universities, they're gradually closing that one down. I said to them, stop it. Get it stopped. It's crazy. It's absolute nonsense. You know, let's have a march. Just stop the damn thing. You need to keep that going. Anyway, that's another thing. Cardiff's already got a great university. Put in some key performance indicators to measure success that are common across all of these places. And then centrally, you could look at which ones are doing well and which ones aren't. And then create an implementation plan with public and private funding. And the big key is how do you get round this issue of disparate landlords who aren't interested. And I'm looking at all sorts of innovative ideas coming out of that now. And one of the ones that might come up is, you know, how do we get guarantee or marshal this lot so they act as one instead of different ones. And I'm looking at some stuff now. I can't mention it because the people that have thought the idea don't want me to mention it yet. But you know, there are people that are trying to see how we can do that. So the key to success is to attract people to live, work and play through a unique reason to be there, with a local economy that works. Get more people in the town, get the density up, and then you can, housing is a problem, we know that. If you go, how many shops do you see empty units above in our towns? I say to some of these smaller towns, start with the premise that your high street, instead of being that big, should be that big, all right? Now, if you can get all the empty shops down there, turn them into houses, even on the ground floor. Why you just don't need them in the future? There's an promote education in town for all generations, and that's important. We need to keep our libraries open, by the way. Stop shutting the damn things. I'll come back to that in a minute. There's an ageing population. When I'm 80 in 17 years' time, there will be twice as many 80-year-olds in this country as there are today. What are we going to do with them all? Where are they going to go? How are we going to keep them active? How are we using the place? Define daytime, evening time and nighttime cultures. And here's the key. Wire up the high street, no black spots, 4G. It should be straight on the local authorities' agenda so that we can switch the whole community on, and traders and communities and doctors and everybody's on the same wavelength. And that's where your library comes in, as a centre of technology. The reason home working doesn't work is because of the solitude. If your libraries worked with hot desking and coffee and lunches there, guess what? People would live and not bother to go to work because they could socialise. Create a local economic blueprint that engages with the community. Look at some of the transition towns. Totnes is an example, and I know that's a bad one because it's full of aged hippies with money. But the fact is that the model does work. And so you've got to create your own local economy and avoid the clone town. You know, we're still going down the clone town route. I mean, the reason we got to where we got to is every town looks the same and there's no difference. And incentivise specialist shops. You know, local government have got to find ways. We should be taking our small stores and independent retailers out of business rates altogether. We could afford to do it. They're only 6% of the total, and they cost more to administer than the money they take. Stop it. And that's just a clear message that I've been trying to give. So the whole theme of my presentation is that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So if you don't have a 20-year plan, it's going to happen to you rather than you make it happen. The pace of change. If I've demonstrated anything tonight, is that you shouldn't assume anything is forever, and it's going to get quicker. This paradigm shift in thinking is required, and a political will has to be there to want to get engaged with this and make it happen. We need legislation to cut through red tape, and we need councils to use things like compulsory purchase. You know, if a landlord's got a place empty for a period of time, just buy it off him. It won't take too long before you do. The landlords have a wake-up call. They've had halcyon days for 30 years. Now it's their time on the rack. Okay, get used to it, guys. You know, life smucks at times, and that's smucking for them now. Empower people locally and dare to imagine the unimaginable, like I did with the models that I talked about, and create a legacy that you can be proud of in the future. And the reason I do these talks is that I was part of the movement that basically created what we got today. I was a new store development director at Tesco for a year as well. I was opening 25 superstores a year. A colleague of mine here was in the research unit finding them for me. I mean, so we were part of the problem, but I just don't want to leave it the way it is for my granddaughters. We do need to create a different future for the younger generation, and the key is to rejuvenate our town centres with people, and that's really all I've got to say. Okay.